the brackets for the Craig Jones Invitational are out, and this is the Jiu Jitsu Oracle's immediate reaction to them. So I'm Ross. I'm joined as always by Calum. We're going to run through the brackets for the under 80 division and the over 80 division, and then at the end of the pod, we're going to give our thoughts on the Superfight situation with the Craig Jones Invitational, because chief organiser Craig Jones revealed on the brackets show some things that happened with the Superfights and why we're not getting certain matches that we thought might get. So stick around and you'll get our thoughts on that. But first off, Calum, how did the whole thing work with the brackets?
Yeah, so essentially there was a fan vote online, which I wasn't aware of at the time and did not participate in, to come up with the top 4 seeds for each bracket. Maybe not the best way of doing things, kind of turns into potentially a bit of a popularity contest, but anyway, for the under 80 kilo division, the top seeds as voted by fans were the 2 Ruotolo brothers and the 2 B-team bros, Jozef Chen and Nicky Ryan. And then for over 80 kilos, it was Nicky Rod, Victor Hugo, which everyone would have guessed, and then William Tackett, which is a fair shout, and then a bit of an oddball, Luke Rockhold as well. I think probably just like fan vote, he managed to get himself in there. So those 4 guys in each bracket were separated because they were the top seeds, and then for the rest of them, it was just like an old school raffle style. There was a number of ping pong balls with people's names written on them, spun around, and then just took the names out one by one and then put up on the board to release who was going to be facing who first round.
Okay, so the way we're going to do this is I will run through the matches and Calum will give a quick reaction to each match. To make it clear, in the under 80, number 1 seed is Tye, number 2 seed is Kade, number 3 seed is Nicky Ryan, and number 4 seed is Jozef Chen. So, first match up, we've got Tye Ruotolo against Jason Nolf.
Yeah, so they mentioned this on the little show that they did, but they said probably good matchup for Jason Nolf in the perspective of it would be better probably drawing like a Tye Ruotolo compared to a Levi Jones-Leary. Might see Tye dip his toes in the water and try stand. I think, I can't remember if it was him or his brother Cade, but one of them definitely had like a very high level Sambo guy in one, and they stood against them. So I think it's probably quite likely that we're going to see Tye stand. I don't think I can really remember the last time he pulled guard. So quite likely to see him stand and then maybe try snatch like a dorse or a leg entry from the feet. Don't see him pulling guard, although he might in the competition. So that's an interesting one. I just like over 3 5-minute rounds, I don't see how Tye doesn't snatch up a submission at some point. So it's like a good match for Jason in the fact that he will potentially get to show some of his wrestling, but bad in the fact that I think he's going to struggle to come out of that without getting submitted.
The winner of that match will then play the winner of Roberto Jimenez against Levi Jones-Leary.
Yeah, I think this is quite a bad matchup for Levi, to be honest. So Jimenez is going to be quite a bit bigger than him. Jimenez himself is like very well versed in the bolo game, and I know myself as someone that used to be like a big bolo guy and still has it in his arsenal but doesn't use it so much. I feel like when people try it to me, I can like avoid it quite well because I know what's going on. So I feel like that's Levi's biggest weapon, and I feel like Roberto will be quite comfortable defending that. He's also going to be a nightmare just to get hold of in that perspective, and he's going to be pushing the pace on Levi. Probably quite similar like outside passing that we saw Tye implement against Levi, and Levi really struggled against that. So interesting matchup. I think every matchup in this under 80 bracket is like really cool, really good matchups, but I think Levi will struggle with Roberto in that match.
Okay, bottom half of the left-hand side of the bracket. First match, Hulk against Kenta.
Yeah, so obviously kind of opposite ends of the spectrum as far as accomplishments. However, Kent is a lot more active. Not seen Hulk as much recently. I think the most interesting thing about this is going to be like the weights. So I didn't know this, but apparently they said this on the show that obviously Kent has won the 77 trials for ADCC, but before that he won the 66. So when he won the 66, Hulk would have been doing like under 99 at the time. So it's quite interesting that these two are now kind of meeting up in the middle. So interested to see how the physicality plays into this. I just think everything Kenta does, Hulk does it and has been doing it for a long time and will probably have some extra physicality. So interested to see how it goes, but I think just the veteran experience and physicality of Hulk, he will probably end up taking that in that match.
And then Andy Varela against 4th seed Jozef Chen.
Yeah, so obviously a cool match, but a little bit disappointing just in the fact that it's been a match that's happened very recently, so it would have been cool to see these guys face someone different first round, but just going off their last match, it was back and forth at points, but yeah, I see Jozef coming out on top of that one again.
So, winner of that match would play the winner of Hulk against Kenta, then meet in the semi-final whomever comes out of the top half of the draw. So by seedings, that would be 1 seed Tye Ruotolo against 4th seed Jozef Chen, but we need to see how the bracket shakes out. On the other side of the draw, we have 2 seed Kade Ruotolo against Matheus Diniz.
Yeah, so it's funny these two drew each other because these are the only 2 former ADCC champions in the bracket, and they've both drawn each other first round. This is like a potential downside to the way they've done this. Obviously, Kade was going to be a top 4 seed, but he's drawn someone that you could make arguments that he is maybe like the 5th or 6th seed in Matheus Diniz. So not something you typically see like the top guy going against someone that could give him a very good match. Just based off of like what they've done recently, obviously you have to go with Kade, but when you think about it, like stylistically, it could be quite a challenging match for Kade, just the size and experience of Matheus and his style. He could potentially shut down Kade's game, potentially get the better of the wrestling exchanges and put Kade on his back, some positions we don't typically see him in. So interesting one, but just based off of like what they've done recently, definitely going to have to go with Kade in that match.
The winner of that plays the winner of Renato Canuto against Tommy Langnacker.
Yeah, so another one that is a really good match, but again, a little bit disappointing just in the fact that they've had each other, well, not fairly recently, I would say, within the past year or two. Was a very fun match to watch, in all fairness, so excited to see that again with whatever they've both been implementing into their games. But we saw Tommy come out on that match in 1, so I would have to go with him again, especially since we've seen more of him recently since that match compared to Renato.
And then we could get Kade against Tommy, which we've seen recently as well.
Yeah.
So, but I will say, for Kade, getting Matheus Diniz as a first-round matchup, when Cade's seeded number 2, I think that's a brutal matchup to get.
Yeah, not ideal. But if you're wanting to win it, you're going to have to get those guys at some point.
Absolutely, absolutely. But often the hardest matches in tournament play are your first and your last. So I just think tough one for Kade, him being 2nd seed, you'd expect him to maybe get a slightly easier match. It's going to be difficult in this division, but I just think that's a really tough one to get for a 2 seed. Okay, bottom half of the draw, Majid Haig against Owen O'Flanagan.
Yeah, so cool match up here. Again, another one where we're going to see how the 8-8 guys cutting down is going to play into their favour, or they're maybe going to have cut too much weight and struggle physically a little bit. But with this match, I kind of see Owen coming out on top of this. He's beaten more big names, submitted more big names, and then maybe with him having a bit of a physicality advantage, we'll see some of the other aspects of his game that we see in the training clips, but not in competition yet. Maybe some wrestling, maybe some top game. But I think if he does get in on Majid's legs, then he probably will be able to implement his game and submit him from there.
And then bottom half of this side of the draw, we have probably the match of the round, Andrew Tackett against Nicky Ryan. And talking about tough matches for high seeds, Nicky is seeded number 3, and he's got Andrew Tackett, who we rated very highly when we did our tier ranking for the under 80 division, which if you've not watched, go check it out. But anyway, Calum, give us your thoughts on Andrew versus Nicky.
Yeah, so I would have had Andy in the top 4 seeds above Nicky. Obviously, if you watch our tier list, you would have known that because we had him in A tier. But yeah, this is, again, the kind of way that they've done this bracket reveal and this seeding, it's a matchup between two very high seeds first round, so not ideal for either of them. I think the fact that there is rounds may go a little bit more in Nicky's favour, just given the fact that we know he doesn't have the best gas tank, but I see Andrew winning this one, unless he can. I think if Nicky gets in on Andrew's legs, I think he can definitely submit him. Jozef submitted him a good while back when they had their match together, so I think if Nicky can do that, you could make the argument Nicky has the more technical wrestling, but as far as just like pulling the trigger and getting the job done, I think on the feet, I would have to go with Andrew on that. I think he's a lot better conditioned physically, and yeah, I would sway towards him in that, even though from a technical perspective, you might favour Nicky Ryan. I just think with what he's done competing recently and his ability to do that in competition, I would go with Andrew in that match.
Okay, over 80. Number 1 seed, Nicky Rod against Max Jimenez is the first match.
Yeah, so again, Max definitely wouldn't have been one of the bottom seeds if they'd seeded this traditionally, so a tough match for Nicky Rod. Max is a big guy. I've not seen him that much recently, although he did get a win over Big Dan on Karate Combat, so he still can beat some of the best guys in the world. I have to go with Nicky Rod on this, but Max is a big guy, big veteran of the game, so could potentially see an upset for Nicky Rod first round, but I would have to favour Nicky Rod.
Owen Livesey against Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, so when I think they drew Owen's name first, and then I was hoping it was going to be one of the two wrestlers, but in fact, when they drew out Muhammad Ali's name, I was quite happy with that as well. I think whenever you see Owen get put on a card or a show, you're always wanting him to get matched up against someone that's going to give him a good go on the feet, because leads to exciting matches, and we're definitely going to get that with Muhammad Ali. So that's very interesting. Muhammad Ali will be a lot bigger than Owen, I think, coming into the match. He's been preparing for MMA, so we'll get to see kind of the changes in his game since the last time we saw them compete, but that's definitely going to be a lot of fireworks in that match. Probably have to go with Muhammad Ali on that, just given the size discrepancy and what he's been able to do at the highest levels of the sport compared to Owen.
So the winner of Nicky Rod against Max will then play the winner of Owen against Muhammad in the top half of that section. And then in the bottom half, we have Adam Bradley against Kyle Bame.
Yeah, so Kyle wasn't able to win trials under 99 this time around. Am I correct in saying that?
I believe so.
Yeah, and then Adam technically didn't win, but we all kind of feel like he did win. So in that perspective, you might sway towards Adam, but I think Kyle's done a bit more in the sport at the highest level for a little bit longer. Both have really good guards, so interested to see who's going to be the guy coming up on top and passing. I can't remember his name, but the guy that did the show alongside Craig Jones reckoned that it was going to be a battle between Adam Bradley's deep half guard and Kyle Bame's Kimura trap. So that will be potentially some interesting back and forth there. So I will probably sway towards Kyle in that match, just given the fact that he's done a bit more at the highest level, but a very interesting match nonetheless.
And then the bottom of that bracket, we have Pat Downey against number 4 seed Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, so I think this is quite a good match. Quite happy to see Luke and Pat draw someone that isn't a straight jiu-jitsu guy. I think Luke will definitely stand with Pat. I don't think he will be able to take Pat down, but he's got a really good guillotine. He's got a really good ability to kind of grab a front headlock and butterfly sweep off of that we've seen over and over again in MMA. So I think we'll definitely see Luke stand against Pat Downey. As I say, I don't see him taking Pat Downey down. Just to kind of compare their opponent in common, it was quite even, the back and forth on the stand-up between Nicky Rod and Luke Rockhold when they had a match in Polaris a while back. And when Nicky Rod wrestled Pat Downey, it wasn't competitive whatsoever. So I don't think he'll be able to take Pat Downey down, but potentially when Pat shoots in or goes for a takedown, we'll see some cool reversal or submission attempt from Luke. So interested to see how that goes, to be honest. Quite hard to call, in all honesty, just given the fact we've not seen that much of Pat in submission wrestling. Maybe favour Luke that he could snatch something in the wrestling exchange.
So the winner of Adam Bradley against Kyle Bame will then play the winner of Pat Downey against Luke Rockhold on we'll call it the left-hand side of the bracket. And then moving over to the right-hand side, top of the bracket, number 2 seed Victor Hugo against recent transfer switch from ADCC to CJI, Lucas Kennard.
Yeah, it's a rough one for him, just switching over and then drawing Victor Hugo. On paper, probably looks like the biggest mismatch of the first round, just over both divisions. However, if there's any style to beat big guys, we know it's Australians with a good K-guard, so we'll maybe see an upset out of that. But I think on paper, Victor Hugo is very likely to come out on top in that match.
And just a quick note, the replacement for Lucas in the ADCC is Achilles Roca, and I think that a great signing by the ADCC because you now have Wagner, the father, and then you have the son, Achilles, and the daughter, Jasmine, all in the competition together, which is a great story. So that is a good replacement, I would say, by the ADCC. Ignacio Santos against Pedro Alex.
Yeah, I think I said this before. I don't really know that much about these two guys to comment. When these two guys were put into the bracket, they were kind of newer names to me, so be interested to see how the match goes, and I'm sure however the match goes, I'll know about them after then, but I can't really comment on this one just because I don't really know too much about these guys.
There's going to be a time you know more about them, and that is going to be the time before we record the over 80 kilogram CJI tier list, which is yet to come, where we're going to do further research on all of these guys, and then we're going to give you our rankings as to how we think these guys stack up against each other. Never mind the seedings that the fans came up with. But the winner of Victor Hugo against Lucas Kennard will then play the winner of Ignacio Santos against Pedro Alex. And then bottom quarter, the bottom segment of right-hand side, we have Daniel Kirkflett against Felipe Andrew.
Yeah, this one's very interesting. Two guys that are most well known for not doing no-gi jiu-jitsu. We've got a gi jiu-jitsu guy and then a wrestler. So I was watching some of Daniel's wrestling matches. He's very, very big and lean at that weight. So I think he's about 280 pounds and lean, moves incredibly well for that weight, and has a fair few pins on his record. So the style of collegiate wrestling, the wrestling continues when it hits the mat. So he's not going to be clueless as far as like the ground grappling. He's going to know how to control someone. And the big thing for him is just knowing how to deal with the submissions and the guard. And unfortunately for him, his opponent has got those two things down. He's got a very good guard and submission threat, as does Felipe Andrew. I think it's a tough match for both of them, actually, just because we don't know how Daniel's going to be able to approach the guard of Felipe Andrew. He's got a very good guard, very good submission threats, good triangle, good straight ankle lock. I think if he catches Daniel in either of those two things, it's probably going to be the night over for him. However, from a physicality perspective, it's going to be a very tough time dealing with someone like Daniel. From Felipe's perspective, I think Daniel's going to outweigh him by probably about 50 pounds, and being leaner on top of that, and being a better athlete on top of that, and being world-class in his own sport, and he's probably going to be a nightmare to get a hold of. So it's hard to call, to be honest. More just interested from a fan to see how this one goes down.
I'd be leaning towards Felipe by footlock.
I would agree with that, but tough one to visualize, but yeah, probably.
Now, shout out Felipe Andrew, who on the recent BJJ Stars event had a fantastic win against Anderson Muniz. Looked great sweeping the top and looked great with loads of pressure position. Eventually scored an arm triangle, if my memory serves me correct. And just another quick note on BJJ Stars, both BB Shark and Mika Galvao displayed excellent wrestling in their victories. So I think they're in great form heading into the ADCC. Now, keeping it on CJI, the winner of Daniel against Felipe will then play the winner of João Gabriel Souza against number 3 seed William Tackett.
Yeah, so again, this is another one that if it was seeded traditionally, they're very unlikely these two guys would be facing off first round. I think if it was seeded traditionally, pretty likely both these guys would be top 5 or 6 seeds, I would reckon. Very tough match for Tackett, I think, outside of Daniel, the Penn State wrestler. João Gabriel Rocha might be the biggest guy in this bracket. Obviously, William is the smallest guy. Canyard as well might be similar to Williams' size, but I would still say Williams probably the smallest guy in this bracket. Very, very tough match for William. Not seen that much of João Gabriel Rocha as of recent, from what I can remember, but just kind of going off of the match with Gordon, there's a potential William could take him down. I think if he can take him down and use his top game, I think he can definitely pass Gabriel Rocha, but taking down someone with that much of a size discrepancy on you is going to be very difficult. And then what would his options be from there? Probably getting in on the legs. We saw Gordon have a pretty tough time with that against João Gabriel, so super tough match for William. I really hope William can come out on the other end of that, but it's going to be a very difficult one just given the physicality difference in that match.
Okay, now let's do a quick chat about the super fight news that we got via Craig. So, you start.
Okay, so the first thing you mentioned was there was a fan in the chat that asked if Kron Gracie versus Marcelo Garcia was a match they were setting up, and he said that Kron had verbally agreed to be in the under 80 category, but that fell through, so that would have been very interesting. But the match they were actually setting up was for Marcelo Garcia versus Charles Olivera, which would have been a huge match, potentially the biggest match of all time, I think, just given Charles Olivera's status in MMA kind of supersedes a lot of grapplers' fame just in the general population, and then Marcelo Garcia obviously being one of the well-known names in the sport throughout all of grappling history, to be honest, so that would have been a massive match. Unfortunately, that fell through.
Okay, and then the other news was Mikey Musumeci's opponent.
Yeah, so you said there was going to be a special rules match. I don't know what that was going to entail, but we were supposed to have a special rules match versus Alexander Volkanovski. We'd heard Craig speaking about trying to get Volkanovski a match. He said that fell through. He didn't really go into detail why that was. So I think if those two matches were on the show, that would have been absolutely massive. That's like 2 huge matches to fall through. 2 UFC champions, and then 2 of like the best to ever do it in jiu-jitsu. So that's like a real shame that those matches have fallen through, I think.
Yeah. One super fight that is still standing is Mackenzie Dern against Ffion Davies. And I just want to shout out Mackenzie for having a tough fight in the UFC at the weekend, managing to get the victory. And then it seems that she's still ready to go, injury-free enough to now take on probably the best female grappler in the world, Ffion Davies. So really glad that match is on. Probably the biggest match we've ever seen in women's grappling. So just when I saw the match with Mackenzie, really tough fight, but delighted that she seems to have come through it well enough to take on Ffion. So that's good. And then we obviously have the Craig Jones v Gabi Garcia match that is still on the card, but which Calum is not the biggest fan of.
It'll be fun to watch.
For our listeners, Calum nodded. Right, that concludes our immediate reaction to the CJI bracket reveal. With the Craig Jones Invitational, we've still got to come back with our over 80 tier list. That'll be out soon. And then if any other news happens along the way, we'll get a podcast out on it. But for now, have a look through the brackets. Let us know what you think. Where are the seeds right? Who do you see coming through? Get into the comments on YouTube. Let us know what you think. But for now, that's enough CJI chat. Until something else happens with CJI or ADCC, that's it for the Jiu Jitsu Oracle.